No, we are not.
Oh, okay.
He's right there. Huh?
Did you need something to drink? Just water.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Come on.
So thank you all. What we are going to talk about is the systems and processes that every business needs. And the point is they can all be automated to some extent. Or everything that I talk about you can do manually. And one thing that sometimes happens with people like me is I like the technology and I want to automate things because I can.
Yeah.
And it isn't necessarily the right thing, especially if a business is brand new and doesn't even know how it does things yet. And suddenly you start automating a system that doesn't exist yet. And you end up having to undo what you just created and rebuild. So let's figure out, map the processes first, do the processes manually, which is what I'm going to describe, and then we can rebuild them or develop them into systems so that you don't have to manually enter every single piece of information every single time. Okay, that's thus the simplification of it all. All right, so I spent 24 years active duty in the U.S. Army, and a very significant portion of that, at least a third, I was running plans, teams, and operations centers for 2-star and 3-star generals. And what's significant about that experience is I'm naturally wired this way, but it gave me a lot of experience doing this, looking at an environment, looking at all the things that are happening, and being able to pick out the 2 or 3 or 4 different pieces of information that are actually relevant to the decision the boss is about to make. And I never worked for any female generals, so when I say this, I'm not saying it's sexist, I'm just saying this is, and I would say, sir, this is the decision you need to make because of this piece of information, right? What I do now is I help small business owners. Here's what's all the stuff that's happening in your environment. Here's the 2 or 3 pieces of relevant information so that you can move forward. Okay.
French vanilla. I like it.
And for this audience, that is imagery is relevant. So the issue is most small business owners are inside the whirlwind. They're doing all of the things, and all of the things have to get done. And when a business reaches some level of scale, they have specialization and departmentalization, and they have resources to solve these kinds of problems. At the sole proprietor end of the scale, all of these problems fall on one person's hat. Yes. So
The life of a solopreneur.
that's the life we chose. And there's times I'm sitting at my computer screens and I'm going like, remember, you chose this. You could be doing 17 other things. You chose this. Okay. So is this something that you're experiencing, or you know someone that's experiencing this? You're jumping from task to task to task, and you have this list of priorities, and other people are dictating. You have this list of tasks, and other people are just dictating the priority. You're in a react mode all the time, trying to. No, the task list actually is getting longer all the time. You're barely keeping up with what's going on your task list. This is probably you. This is probably 6 or 8 people that you know. Welcome, come on in. Recognize you from last week? You are probably you are really good at what you do. There's a reason that you do what you do. There are specifically 21 hats. And I can introduce you to the guy where I got the 21 hats from, but looking at the business processes, there's 21 different roles that someone has to do. And if you're a sole proprietor, all 21 hats are on your head. And you just get overwhelmed by all the tasks. You're not unusual at this point. So, what we need to do is do routine things routinely. Alex Hermosi here says, what needs to be done is probably obvious. It's just, are you willing to do it long enough and longer enough than the counterpart in order to be able to beat that statistic that says most small businesses close within 5 years? Are you willing to work through that pain long enough to get to a profitable, stable business? Ivan Meisner, the founder, CEO, Chief Visionary Officer of BNI, says, success comes from the uncommon application of common knowledge. Most of us know what we need to do. The reason we're sitting in this room is we're willing to do it. There's a whole bunch of people who would rather punch the time clock and have a boss tell them what their priorities are at any given time. So we can go down the rabbit hole and we can dig into the little details of all the things that you could automate, or we can talk about 5 systems, 5 processes, and how you could automate them, but at the very least, the system needs to be in place so that you can do them manually. Votes? Feedback? All right.
I'm happy with that.
We'll go with Tony Robbins. Let's keep growing. All right, so we're going to talk about 5 things. We're going to talk about the cost to businesses of missing communications. We're going to talk about what the message sequences need to look and feel like. We're going to talk about the processes you use to manage the people you are communicating with, when it's appropriate to automate tasks versus when it's not appropriate. We're going to talk about turning the conversations we're having with our current prospects and customers into long-term relationships that generate referrals. Maybe a bonus, and we'll make sure we leave some time for questions and answers.
Is this something that we'll be able to have access to, like the slides?
I'm totally willing to give you access to the slides.
That'd be great. So I don't need to write it.
And the rehearsal, which will probably be much more rough than what I'm giving you right now, will go live on YouTube in like 30 or 40 minutes.
Great. Okay.
All right. Okay. It'd be a lot less fun because I'm just talking to a camera too. All right. So how quickly you respond to an incoming message affects whether that prospect sees your business as credible or not. And so I'm talking about calls, but it applies equally if your messages are coming in through Facebook Messenger or Instagram DM, if they're coming in through email, if they're coming in on your phone line, but they're coming in as a text message, they're coming as a chat widget off your website. Whatever way that person is trying to communicate with you, how quickly you respond and how adaptive to what their request is that you respond is critical to how they perceive your business as a credible business. And for those larger organizations who have dedicated call centers and and a front desk kind of person who is available to answer those calls, that's all well and good. When the business is somebody who's pushing a lawnmower or crawling under houses or in the kitchen, how does that business project that responsiveness and still get the work done for the client? So if a message comes into your business and that turns into a sale and you're able to generate income from that sale, what was the value of that call?
Whatever the GP was on the sale.
Okay, right? And it's a relative term. There's several different types of businesses represented in the room, right? But even if you're working 5 days, even if you're talking about 5 days a week, that's 260 sales a year. What is that financial impact to your businesses, right? If you're closing them, that's a good thing. If you're not even getting the opportunity, if you're calling back that evening, well, by the time evening comes and you're tired and you still got to do the books, and so I'll call them tomorrow. Well, you call them back tomorrow, they've already hired somebody else, right? And you've missed that opportunity. So, I think what all of us need is a system in place to at least get an initial response back to them, give them assurance that you're not closed, and we're going to talk about that a couple more times in the course of this slide deck, and that you will in fact get back to them. And then you have to demonstrate that you'll get back to them by getting back to them, right? So the very least you should have is some kind of automated message that doesn't sound like a 1980s tape cassette voice machine. Yeah, that says, I'll get right back to you, and some kind of flow of communication that initiates. How people perceive your business as credible depends on whether they see you being responsive to their query. And then depending on how we set that up, you can even turn that into the backside of the conversation with a follow-up message saying, hey, we did get back to you. Was that helpful? Did that solve your question? Did that answer your question? We can use these processes to nurture those relationships so that this person is seen and treated as a human being, even when we're busy doing all of the other things that have to happen in our business. All right, so we talked about communications. Let's talk about the flow of conversation, whether this person ends up that reached out to your business, whether they end up turning into a client, a customer, or not. What do we do next to nurture and build that relationship and generate those opportunities for referrals later on down the road, even if we end up not being the person they hire to do the job? Most of us know, uncommon application of common knowledge, most of us know that we should be emailing our list more often. But our list is a handful of invoices that are buried on our accounting software, or it's handwritten quotes that we gave to somebody, or it's this or that, or it's literally just contacts in our personal phone, and we don't have it consolidated in a way that we can even do a follow-up in any kind of reasonable way. And then there's this issue of how much can I send to them and not feel to them like I'm being pushy.
Right.
I would submit that for most of us as small business owners, unless you're literally pushing something every single day, and you're just like, I don't care, I'm going to push it. Most of us, we're going to say, I don't want to be too pushy, and we aren't, right? The fact that we're asking ourselves, am I being too pushy, is probably enough of a filter to say we're probably erring too far on the side of caution. But the cautionary tale is, of the people who are unsubscribing, 73%, the reason they're unsubscribing is because they're getting pushed too much. So how do we customize, tailor the message so that it's sufficient frequency, but it feels custom, or it feels to them like it's a, yes, they know it's a newsletter kind of message, right? They know it's a form message, but it feels personalized enough, and it feels relevant to them because you've segmented your audience, and I'm using a technical term. I don't know that I'm actually going to address the term segmented. You've separated apart the people you're reaching. You're sending messages that apply to those particular categories. Okay? Yeah. I'm just going to read my quote, but you can see my quote there on the slide. So there you go. So people buy from those they know, like, and trust. So what we want to do is build our authority in our space based on the messaging that we're sending to them. And the other side of the equation, because all of this is a balancing act, and it's unique to each business, is when someone does unsubscribe, they're actually voting, saying, unless you were literally being spammy, right? As long as you were messaging appropriate to that audience, when they unsubscribe, they're voting. They're saying, you know what, I'm looking for a different provider. Okay, now we know. Okay. So these are the technical steps, and it's formatted specific to email marketing, but it applies equally to your social media marketing as well. So warming the domain is the process of taking an email address that you're going to be using for mass messaging, and getting enough traffic two-way traffic to that email address so that it is seen by the spam filters in the email service providers as a legitimate email address and not as a spammer, right? Okay. There's also some technical setup for that email address that we need to do before you start using that email address as a messaging platform, as opposed to just one-to-one. One-to-one is almost always going to go through, but as soon as you start using that email address to blast to a broadcast kind of messaging, if the configurations aren't set up correctly, it will get flagged as a spam profile and blacklisted pretty quickly. List hygiene is the segmenting that I talked about a moment ago. Identifying categories of your audience, and if someone's not engaging, put them on a tempo that's slower. So they may not have opted out, they might not have unsubscribed yet. That means they're not uninterested, but they also aren't expecting to hear from you every week or every couple days. So maybe once a month instead. Versus people who are in your warm audience. Thank you for the water. And engaged, you can engage them more actively. Value versus call to action. There's a misperception especially happens in social media, and especially happens with social media people who are using social media who aren't native to the US, where I'm providing you my list of services. That's valuable. No, that's a call to action. If you're saying this is what I do, you should hire me, that is a call to action post. A value post or a value email or a value message is we're talking in terms of information. It's information that is useful to the person, independent of whether they're paying you anything for it. Specifically, what they're paying you is their attention, and that's the only thing you're asking of them from reading that message, watching that video on YouTube. You're asking them to give you their time, and you're being very deliberate not to ask for anything more than that. Depending on the platform, depends on how often you can ask for something more. You can ask for a specific action. Depending on the segment of your audience, you can ask for something more on some kind of frequency basis. Okay. And all of these conversations, the initial inbound, where they establish community contact with you, engine. Is that a Great Western? It's a choo-choo. That's what we know.
Simplify. Simplify.
Yes, simple. Well played, sir. All right. So when that person's initially establishes contact to us, and that follow-up series of communications, what we're talking about is a concept that in the marketing world we call a funnel. And there's a little bit of a problem in the marketing world because funnel has become synonymous with the landing page.
Sales, yeah.
With the sales page of the process. And that's only and the actuality of a funnel, a sales funnel, is conceptual. This is everybody that possibly could use my service, and of those people, these are the ones who are my market that I'm trying to engage because they're my ideal target market. And of them, as I'm sending messages, some of them are going to never hear my message, and I'm invisible to them and they can't buy from me. Some of them are going to hear my message, and now I have awareness. They are at the top of my funnel. They are aware of me. They are aware that I solved the problem that they have, which is why they are in my target market. You want your funnel to be leaky. We talked earlier about unsubscribes. If someone enters the top of your funnel and they're in the middle of your funnel and you're describing your process of how you solve their problem, and they're going like, yes, you can repair my deck on my house, but you don't serve, suddenly I lose all kinds of geography. Burien. You don't serve, Burien. I was thinking farther north, like Kirkland, right? You don't serve, okay, let me opt out of this. I don't need to hear any more from you because you're not going to come to Burien to take care of my porch. Once they actually engage with you, with your contact, that gives us the opportunity to actually have a sales conversation. And then the process that we're talking about is conceptual. So I'll just take a step back. So the reason that sales pages, the landing page, has become, in addition to, it was driven by a company who shall remain nameless, but whose initials are CF, actually branding their company as we build sales pages. We're a platform for building sales pages. That sales funnel landing page on your website is a step on this conceptual funnel. It's not the totality of the funnel. That's the point I'm trying to make. So how we build a process that allows the customer to engage with us. And from my perspective, here's a problem that a lot of us as small businesses have regarding the concept of a sales funnel. We see the world from the perspective of when our cash register rings. And we see so we can chart the customer journey from when they're problem aware but solution unaware, through when they're aware of us and aware that we can solve that problem, to a buying decision, to they've made a purchase decision, and then we're following up and nurturing that long-term relationship. And none of us went through that process when we were buying something. This particular purchase that we made in time happened in the course of our normal life. And that's what's happening to all of our customers as well. They're living life, and it's a chaotic, messy thing. And when they engage with us, they need a clear message from us so that they can see that, yes, I still am interested in what this person has to say. Because otherwise, their distractions of all the other things that's happening in the course of their life means that we're just a little tiny blip on their radar. And they end up buying from the big name store because they have brand recognition. So, conceptually mapping the journey and looking at the actuality of who our ideal customers are, and when we have a sale, taking the time to do the backtracking of how did that person interact with us? Does that match what I envision my funnel is, or did I stylize my funnel because of how I think it should go, not from their perspective? So taking that moment to backtrack. In the Army, we call it an after-action review. So this is what happened. We made a sale, we closed the sale, we provided the service. It did or did not turn into a review. It did or did not turn into a referral. But taking this process backwards, how did that look from our perspective? But more importantly, how did it look from their perspective? Can I rebuild, can I reinforce the touch points that they had, that I can now realize they had, and do more of that? Can I double down on those things? Okay, so we talked about miscommunications, campaigns, the sales process, and then we're going to talk about automation of tasks. Who likes redoing work? Okay. I got two opposite answers right there, right? No one likes to do the same thing twice. No one likes to redo something. No one likes to do a task twice. Yet, a lot of our systems are, because we are having conversations with individual people, and we're actually having conversations with them on our personal phone. Their contact information is in our phone book on our phone. And we're now air gapping that over into our invoicing system or our estimating system. Or we're writing notes and I use the term air gapping, but I did a visual demonstration, so you got what I mean, right? We're redoing work because we have 4 or 5 different systems in our process. Yeah, and then, I should have a blank line right here, right above task interruption. And this happens to me at least every day? No. Probably, huh? Huh?
Every 7 minutes.
So, yeah, certainly it happens. I'm sitting at my, it's constantly, at least every hour, I'm doing something. I realize I need to take an action. I'm literally, because of my job, I'm literally sitting at a computer with screens. And by the time I go from this tab on that browser to that tab on this browser, I've forgotten why I went there. Mirror, right?
Yeah.
The point of building these systems and processes is so that we can efficiently get each task done, so that we're not having those interruptions disrupt the flow of especially the mission critical tasks when we're trying to do customer service work. So we have to wear all 21 hats. We're spending a lot of time doing administrative tasks to keep our business flowing. And those are essential tasks for running the business, but those aren't revenue producing tasks that are customer facing.
Right.
Yeah.
Completely unbillable tasks.
Yes, yes.
Or
The-
costing you money tasks.
They're, yes,
Because you're
Not only
Right.
unbillable, but a negative.
I brought it up to one of my team this morning. I was like, I wanted to reiterate the thing that I've been reiterating since December.
Mhm.
The example last week cost us 4 hours of employee work
Mhm.
plus a week and a half of client time.
Mhm.
You know, just because this one thing wasn't done correctly.
Mhm.
I reiterated it to my team this morning. Of like, this is how important this one thing is to do.
Literally this morning. Yeah. Okay. Yeah. So what do we do about this? A software platform that is an all-in-one platform, so that information that's in one part of the platform doesn't have to be manually transferred. It's in one part of your system, doesn't have to be air-gapped over to another system, or at very least an automated integration where information that shows up in one portion of your system can populate into another, so you're not redoing work. And at the same time, depending on the stage of the business, when you get to that larger stages and you can departmentalize and specialize, maybe you have a software that's specialized for the accounting. Maybe there's a different accounts receivable software versus accounts payable software. Because they're completely different teams that are doing completely different things, and there's just an integration in the backside in the accounting world. When you're doing all the work yourself, having to transfer information between systems does consume way too much time. So when you're at this stage in business, identifying what tasks are essential, and like customer-facing tasks and IRS-facing tasks, Washington Department of Revenue-facing tasks, those three are probably non-negotiables. Anything that can get you compliance issues with whatever your industry regulation is, those are probably non-negotiables. Non-negotiables. I said it differently a second ago. Non-negotiables is the word I meant earlier. And there's a whole bunch of other things that we need to accept that we're all human and we can only do what we can do. And so there's some things that need to be done just good enough. Until we have the resources to have a specialized person who can bring that particular function up to some higher standard. Okay, so we talked through all these systems, and now we'll talk about the lifetime value of a customer. So how do you demonstrate to this person who's gone through this journey, engaged with you over time, made a purchase, been provided a service, that you weren't just there for the money, that you were actually there to provide them value in their life. You were there to serve them. How do you demonstrate care? This affects your online reputation specifically because not only is the number of reviews that your company has an indicator to someone who encounters your company of how well you serve, but the recency, how long ago the most recent review is dated matters. So if they encounter your business and there's no reviews at all, your business is seen as non-credible. They don't even know if you're even in business. There's just a Google business profile. If they encounter your business and the most recent review is 5 years ago, They don't know if you've gone out of business or you've gotten that bad, or they don't know. They're in this limbo stage of we don't know if this is a legitimate business. So I've heard people say, well, you need at least X number of reviews. Well, if you're a 3-month-old company, you're not going to have 50 reviews. If you're a 50-year-old company and you have 50 good 5-star reviews, but they're all 10 years old, that's not helpful to you either. So the actual numbers are, it depends. What matters is, are you getting those reviews, and what are you doing with the reviews when you get them? And so up until this point, I've talked a lot of basically conceptual, with a couple of discrete examples, but I'm going to actually give you a technique as the takeaway for today. Who you're talking to when you get that review is not the person who gave you the review. You're addressing your response to the person who gave you the review, but you're actually talking to whoever reads that review later. So always say thank you. Is it on this slide? Is it on my next? Well, yeah. I'm missing one of my statistics. I deleted a slide out of my slide deck. I apologize. So here's the slide that's missing out of the slide deck. This is how easy it is to win in business in America. Only 25% of businesses respond to their reviews. And of the businesses who respond to their reviews, their net income is 35% higher than their competitors in the same market. So you could be doing 35% better than your competitor simply by being the 1 out of 4 that's actively responding to your reviews. And then the technique. When you respond to the review, the key thing is you're just being appreciative. Because they didn't have to. They paid you to do the work, and you did the work. And now they chose to give you a review. And so, say thank you. When they give you a positive review, this is a little template. Say thank you to the person who gave you the review, and you're communicating to whoever reads this review that this is how we expect, this is the behavior, and I'll get you the slides. This is the behavior that we are trying to provide on a regular basis, right? That's the commitment to results, or the commitment to our service. Not color-coded alignment there. And thus I should have given you a pause. Go ahead and take a picture if you want to take a picture. But I should have let you know I had another built on the slide. Because the template is, you're thanking the person, you're reinforcing that you appreciate the opportunity to help them, and you're telling the person who reads the review, this is the experience you can probably expect as well. Right? One of the challenges that causes businesses to not answer reviews is they're worried about the negative reviews. And they're worried about the emotional impact of having, I know I didn't do a good job, and now I have to read this person say I didn't do a good job, right? Express appreciation to the person. Hey, you took the time to write this message. It didn't go the way I intended it to go, and I know you weren't really happy with the result. But without that information about how it went, I can't get better. And now you're talking to the person who reads the review later. And there's a third category of reviews, and that's the invalid reviews. So when somebody puts spam on your website, spam on your website, they put invalid reviews in your system that they were never a customer. There are dispute methods with each of the review systems. So when somebody leaves you a Google review, there's a way to send a message to Google and say, this person is not a customer. While that process is happening, you can still say, hey, thanks for your information. I don't have you in my database. Could you contact me? Anyone who's reading the review, they're not in your database. How can they not be in your database if you're a customer? If they can't figure that one out, then they probably aren't your ideal customer anyway. All right, so we talked about a whole bunch of stuff, and the message for all of this is consistency is more important than perfection. Identify what you can do on a consistent basis and do that until you have enough resources that you can do more on a consistent basis. In the social media space, it might look like each of the platforms has a different culture, different tempo. And so if you were to post on what is now X on Twitter once a month, you'll never get even seen. Well, you could probably post 5 times a day on Twitter and never get seen. It's just an entire different animal. If you were to try to post 5 times a day on your Google business profile, it is excessive. You should not do that. If you were to post on LinkedIn 5 times a day, that would be, you'd better have something really important to say, because otherwise people are going to very quickly ignore you. On Instagram, 5 times a day is probably appropriate. On Facebook, it's pushing right on the edge of too much. But very few of us in this room are going to post 5 times a day anyway, right? The question is how many times a week? Well, maybe Liz.
I was like, I'm looking at Liz.
Yeah, I mean, not on the same account.
But not on that's the actual point. Even Liz isn't doing 5 times a day for client accounts, right? And for a special event, at an event over the course of a 2 or 3 day period, there should be a surge of posts during that event. And then it goes quiet again for a week or two. Just enough to say, to experience the follow-up to, hey, that was a great event. That was a great event. We're looking forward to the next one, right? Okay.
People forget the social part of social media very often.
As soon as you started to say it, I was trying to remember if Bridget's quote was on the page, right? Or if it was on the next one. And there's only one, right? So I've been using this number 5 times a day. Really, you should be thinking in terms of in a week or in a month. Once a day, for most of us, once a day on each of those platforms is more than our competitors are doing. If you can consistently do every other day on most of those platforms, you're probably as present as you need to be, because the content that you're posting is the media part of social media. And Angie just said, the social part is where, when someone engages with your content, express appreciation by going and engaging on their content, whatever they posted most recently. When somebody writes a comment, at very least say thank you. Be social. All right. So, thank you to Liz and Jessica and Chun for creating this thing. And thank you all for listening to me for the last 45 minutes or 70 hours or however long it's been. Yeah. So you should have, the point is, have some systems. And whether those systems are, I know when someone gives me a review, these are the 5 words I'm going to say. So you don't have to rewrite it in your head every single time. You have a process, you can knock it out, you get back to doing whatever it is you do. Or you can get some automated systems to do it for you. I'm Keith, I'm the bald guy. I'll be in the neighborhood all day. Ish.
Well done.
Thank you.
Do you have questions?
Sure.
Okay.
We've got like 15 seconds.
Oh, no, okay.
I'm teasing.
Okay. I was like, I can wait like 15 minutes.
I'm teasing you again.
Okay. So I am somebody who has crippling phone anxiety, like full-blown panic attack if I answer a ringing phone.
Okay.
I have had VAs, I have had associates, like people that I've hired to do phone calls. It does not work out for me. Is there a reality where I can be a business owner that does not have phone calls? Like, is there a way to funnel them to a different form of contact? If I just literally can't answer a phone and can't find somebody that can do it the way that I need them to do it.
Mm-hmm.
I don't get a lot of calls, like, but
And specifically, you're talking about inbound calls, not cold calling.
correct.
Not outbound calls.
Correct.
So here's the answer 3 months ago, and then I'll give you the answer today.
Okay.
3 months ago, the term missed call text back is probably not proprietary. It's certainly not trademarked. But even more than the term, it's a descriptive term, right? So the idea that when you receive a phone call and it goes to voice message, within some period of time, 37 seconds to 3 minutes, you text that number back and say, hey, I just missed a call. I'm going to check the voicemail in a little bit, but can I help you now? And we can automate that so that you don't even have to type that text message.
Right, and I was wondering if there's something to leave on the message
Mm-hmm.
that's, because my personal phone, if you call it, it says, I don't take phone calls, I probably won't listen to a voicemail even, so if you need to get a hold of me, text me.
Uh-huh.
Is there, I mean, does that sound unprofessional to tell potential clients, like, I can't answer a phone? Like,
Yeah, you just, well, but can't
You
it,
feel like-
can't is a, can't, yes, I would not word the voice
Right,
message
right.
to say can't, right? Because that's a personal thing.
Right.
But to say, there are very many, when I call businesses, very often the message says, the quickest way to get a hold of me is to send a text. And so it implies the same thing,
right,
right? And so if we're leaving the voicemail that says, hey, if our voice answering says, thanks for calling, we'll get back to you, you can expect the text message in a moment. Now they're not even surprised
okay.
that they didn't, whether they leave a voicemail or not, now you turn around and you convert it to a text conversation.